The latest, thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. For over 500 years, Europe did not nearly visit Africa. Europe invaded Africa. Europe raided Africa. Europe burned villages, broke kingdoms, stole people by the millions, shipped them across oceans like cargo, walked them to death, and then came back for more. When human bodies were no longer enough, Europe took the land, drew borders with rulers, installed puppets, extracted gold, rubber, diamond, oil, dignity, starved people, brutalized cultures, and then had the nerve to write history books calling it exploration. Civilization. 500 years of violence. So when Tucker Carlson says Africans are destroying Europe, you have to ask, destroying it how? By walking? By breeding? By existing in spaces Europe once declared itself entitled to roam freely? Because when Europeans showed up on African shores uninvited, armed and violent, that was called discovery. When Africans showed up in Europe fleeing wars, poverty, instability, much of it caused by European interference, that's called invasion. The double standard isn't subtle, it's screaming. And here's the part they never want to talk about. Africans didn't wake up one morning and say, let's go rule Europe. Africans moved because the global system was rearranged against them. Because borders were drawn without consent. Because economies were engineered to serve foreign interests. Because coups were sponsored, leaders were assassinated, resources were extracted, and death was imposed like modern chains.
I just love the idea of this documentary so much, where you actually go to the places along the trail of migration into the West. Where did you start?
We started in Mauritania, and then we went to the Canary Islands, which is a Spanish territory, but, so to Spain, the Canary Islands, and we went to mainland Spain, to France, and the United Kingdom.
Unbelievable. What's Mauritania, for those who don't know?
Mauritania is a West African Islamic republic, and that is the launch point where a lot of these so-called migrants leave on boat and head to the Canary Islands. They leave from other countries as well, but Mauritania nowadays is the main launch point.
Why Mauritania?
It's just a convenient point. They sort of come from all over the Sahel and Maghreb up north, and then from south they'll come from like Sierra Leone, they'll come from Senegal and other countries, and they sort of meet there. And it's also geographically situated near the Canary Islands, so it's convenient. And that's where they leave from. But they also leave from countries like Senegal or I think they leave from Jordan sometimes.
It's kind of crazy though that you as an American and your brother also, just two Americans, can know exactly how this works. You're just two ambitious young guys. You're right. You don't work for CIA.
Right. That's right.
And somehow you know the migrant route and the means of transporting hundreds of thousands, millions of people illegally.
Right.
Well, how do you know that?
Yeah. Well, we've been studying this for a while. We studied this very intensively here in the United States. As I said to you earlier off camera, we were the first Americans, as far as I'm aware. I mean, somebody could contact me if this is incorrect, but I'm not aware of anybody else that's done it. We were the first Americans to go from South America, from Ecuador to the U.S. border. And when you look at what's going on in Europe, a lot of the same organizations are running the show out there as well. And so if you know, okay, just read the news. Okay, they're landing in the Canary Islands, they're taking off from Mauritania. From there, it's not really that difficult to start putting it together. And, as long as you know what NGOs to go check out, what questions to ask, you'll figure it out.
I think in the minds of most Americans, certainly our view of immigration is from Latin America to the United States. It's like, starts with Mexican farm workers, and then it's all of Latin America. Okay, great. And then when we think of Europe, we think of refugees from the Syrian wars, Muslims from the Levant. But African migration is like a lot of it from the most violent continent in the world. And who's facilitating that? Do you know?
Yes, it's not an easy answer, so I can't just be like, well, it's just like this one group.
It's this guy, yeah.
Right. So it's many people. I would say, at the highest level, like if we're looking at this from an airplane, it really is the populations, the native populations of Europe not realizing that this is an existential threat. Because if they did, they would be up in arms tomorrow. And these politicians, these are feckless people for the most part. These are not people that really give a damn. They're just trying to win the next election. They're less concerned about the present and more concerned about winning the next election, right?
They are.
And so, if there was enough pressure from the native population, this would stop tomorrow. So like at the highest level, that's really what it is that the natives don't realize what a threat this is. And it's existential, and it's the end of Europe, and it will be the end of the United States as well, the West in general.
It calls for revolution of some kind.
It really does.
Yes.
100%. So that's at the highest level. Now, at the lower levels, if we're looking at who's actually doing this, you're talking criminal organizations, you're talking opportunist countries who use this as a means to get, financial aid, financial support, almost like blackmail. And you're looking at non-governmental organizations, many of them. And, we could get into that. I mean, they should be investigated, audited, prosecuted, a lot of them, but,
I notice they haven't been.
Well, a lot of them haven't been. No.
Right.
100%.
Can you name some of those NGOs?
Absolutely. So the king daddy above everything is the United Nations.
Yes.
And their migration wing, which is the International Organization of Migration, the acronym is the IOM. And really everywhere you go and where you see this stuff, and by everywhere you go, I mean, when you're at key border crossing points, I'll give you an example. In the Americas, for example, when these people cross the Darien Gap, which I've crossed with my brother, we've trekked through that jungle. There is a town called Secretly, which is on the Colombian side, and that's like the launching point where from there they get on a boat, they go to the mouth of the jungle, and they start trekking across. You have IOM workers that were there. Now the flow has, stopped under Trump. The infrastructure is still there, so I do think if we get, Gavin Newsom, for example, in 2028, this could start again, but, we don't have to go there for now. But you have IOM workers there. What they were doing is they were handing out, I don't know what else to call them, it sounds crude, but rape kits, where these women, they would hand to migrant women kits that had condoms, day after pills, and whistles, like in case you're getting raped in the jungle. And then they pop out on the other end, if they make it, God willing, and then they're put in UN camps, and you have the IOM there as well, and giving them aid, handing out maps, that sort of thing. And then in Europe, it's the same thing. What we got on camera was honestly the most incredible thing maybe that I've ever gotten on hidden camera, where we were in the Canary Islands, and I was tailing a bus. A boatload of these people had just got off from the island of El Hierro, and they're taken off the boat, they're processed, and they're put on a bus, and they're driven to a camp. And so I'm tailing this bus to a camp, and the entire time I'm looking for the United Nations. I'm trying to find these people so I can talk to them. Haven't seen anything, and I'm feeling like, are we gonna get anything out of this? And I see this man in a blue vest, and I know who that is. Okay, that's the United Nations worker. So I talk to him, and we arrange a meeting, and we take him out. And this is when people watch the documentary, they'll see this. And so this guy's job is to, I believe he's still working with them, is when these so-called migrants come in, to pay them money and get information from them. Who did you pay to smuggle you up here to Europe? How is this working? To get information ostensibly so that they could be prosecuted by European countries. But what we could get into and what we caught on camera, this guy was so corrupt and admitted to such a corrupt system that he was part of. It blew my mind, and we could get into that. But that's the IOM. There's the Red Cross. There's the Norwegian Refugee Council. There's many other organizations. There's, Catholic Charities. There's an organization called ASIM. That's another Catholic charity that flies them from the Canary Islands to Europe. Hebrew Immigrant Aid Societies that Alejandro Mayorkas sat on the board of. So these are just a few.
So the net result of this, the end point of this long journey, is Western Europe, where the benefits are the highest. They were the richest countries in the world. Because of this, they no longer are. And the effect has been a radical decline in quality of life for Europeans and in the state of their cities.
But Tucker doesn't talk about that. That kind of history ruins the narrative. Instead, he gaslights smoothly, calmly, with a straight face. He framed Africans as an invading force, as if migration exists in a vacuum, as if Europe itself doesn't teach the world how to migrate violently. Let's be very clear. If Europeans had never gone to Africa, Africa would not have been undiscovered. The word alone is an insult. Africa had empires while Europe was still figuring out sanitation. Africa had trade routes, universities, governance systems, and diplomacy long before European ships showed up with guns and flags. Why this obsession with discovering people? Why was it ever Europe's business to discover human beings who already existed, already lived, already knew who they were? And please, spare us tired comments. You wouldn't be speaking English. That's a flex. That's evidence. Evidence of conquest, not generosity. Language is not a gift when it arrives with chains. The truth Taka won't say is this: Europe is not being destroyed by Africans. Europe is being confronted by its own history. The movement of Africans into Europe is not conquest, it is consequences. Consequences of centuries of extraction, consequences of destabilization, consequences of pretending history ended when the colonies gained flags but not power. Europe went everywhere. Now the world comes to Europe. And sadly, that's a crisis. Unbelievable. When everything is done against Africa, a civilization, exploration, teaching Africans what to do because they can do nothing for themselves. But when Africans do the same thing, it is now invasion, destroying. They need to wake up. They are sleeping far too long. But all the things that we have received from the world is okay. And that is why Africans, we say, we need to unite and the time is now. We are the only people that can set ourselves free from these chains. And it's either we do it now or we will continue to remain slaves to the rest of the world. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world and in the United States of America.